Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking time to check out this very special interview with an original junglist. My guest today has been involved in rave culture from the very beginning. A man who was at those early acid house parties, played on pirate radio, was the artist and repertoire man for Renk Records, who toured the UK, Europe and as far out as Japan with the authentic jungle sounds of the early 90s. Someone who has really and truly paid his dues and can say without doubt that he was there when it happened. Steve B, welcome to the Chronicles.
How you doing, mate? You sound like you're talking about someone else. That's quite good, actually.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know, mate.
What year did you start going to raves? What are some of the memories you can share about the atmosphere, the sound systems, and of course the music in the early days?
I was born in Belfast. I grew up in Dalston. We moved here when I was about 2. Homerton's next. We got Dalston, Clapton, Homerton, Hackney Wick. Okay. Hackney Wick's where the Olympic Stadium is now. And prior to that, it wasn't all wasteland, but there was a lot of sort of open space around there, empty warehouses and stuff like that. So there would always be things going on in that end of the world. I was pretty lucky as far as location was concerned. Like we picked up on it really early. Like I remember going to secondary school in the first year, and one of the kids said to me, "Oh, what music you into?" And I was like, "Electro." And then, I think it was like 86, I think, I started to hear this sort of music. And at first I didn't really like it. I think, and then about 6 months afterwards, I was just immersed in it, mate. But some of the early things that were sort of branded was like Genesis. I remember going to the first one of those at the Metal Box Factory in Leabridge Road. I don't know if it was the Metal Box Factory, but it's definitely Leabridge Road. And I can remember paying £5, I think it was Christmas Eve, and going to that. And it was just amazing, mate. Like the atmosphere, the music, like you got to remember, like prior to that, everyone was kicking at each other when they, like there was fight. You could walk 10 minutes down the street and you come across 10 fights. It was just so violent back then. And then the acid house thing come along, and it just turned it round. There was no violence. Everyone was happy, smiling. Like I come from Hackney. No one talks to each other. You don't look at anyone. You know what I mean?
That's actually quite an interesting point there, because in the late 80s and early 90s, acid house or rave garnered a lot of negativity from the media. These people are off their heads and this, that and the other. Being a raver, did this have sort of any effect on you with regards to your friends or your family? Like, why are you going to these places? It's all trouble according to the newspapers and stuff. Was it ever like that?
I can remember not saying to my mum that I was going to these sort of things, but then I started working in a publishing company, and the guy that I worked with, he was a lot older than me, and I'm telling him about the stuff that I would do at the weekends, and he's like, "We used to do that in the 60s, mate. Like, you're just doing what we did, like 20 years after. You're 20 years too late," sort of thing. But I would tell him about the things, but he was quite cool. He knew what was going on, but some of the other people in the firm were like, "You go to them things, innit?" And like you say, they're reading these newspaper articles in the Sun. I remember the really funny one was, that there were ecstasy rappers all over the floor. Okay. I think it was something like they'd let off a cannon with paper in it or something like that. Yeah, it was such a positive thing, such a positive movement. Like, it was Thatcher's Britain. We just weren't having it. We was like, look, we're partying. We're not doing anything bad. The only sort of criminal element to it, well, at the start would have been like actually breaking into the warehouse, but
yeah,
like there was no bad vibes. It was all positive. Like it was all love. There was no trouble. We did sort of get caught up in that thing, like you say, that it was a negative connotation, but they were normally people that didn't go or didn't understand the nature of the beast almost. So,
how many people would be at these raves then?
I was never really one for what we used to call the big raves, like the 20,000 people in a field. That wasn't my thing. I was more into going to the clubs. Like I didn't go to S.O.U.R. I used to go to Futures. I went to Rage.
So who were the big DJs in those days, and was there like an MC presence at this stage?
So you had people like that we would know today. You had Frost, Fabio and Groove. The guys that I really liked were like Trevor Fung, Colin Favor, Colin Dell. There were others as well, Tony Wilson, people like this. These were the original acid house DJs. But as far as an MC was concerned, it would probably, outside of Chalky White, I can't really, up north it might have been a bit different, but down south it was, I can't really think of anyone outside of Chalky White.
And would that be just more of a host?
Yeah, spitting bars wasn't a thing, not at all. Yeah, it would just be an accompaniment to the music, giving it lyrics down the phone. Like I say, just an accompaniment to the music, yeah.
Talk to me about Friends FM and other pirate stations like Weekend Rush at the time.
For me, anyway, I know there was the Soul Pirates, but I was a bit too young for that. So for us, the first ones were Centreforce and Sunrise. They were the ones that we all listened to. Friends was part of what I would call the second wave of pirates that came through. So you had Centreforce and Sunrise, they were the first. Then there was Dance FM, Rave FM, Fantasy, and Friends. There may have been some others, but I guess they were the sort of the main one. All right, so when Friends finished, I come off of there, and then I went on a station called Impact, which then turned into a station called Format FM, which was run by a guy called Colin. He lived in the same estate that Weekend Rush and Cool FM used to broadcast from.
Okay.
So Cool and Weekend Rush, and you had Defection as well, us, Format. We were sort of the third or fourth, but the sort of first wave of like hardcore or hardcore junglist stations.
And who were like the DJs or MCs you would meet around the circuit at that time?
So, yeah, it's a bit funny. I think like, if you're on, like I know a few of the Cool guys, I knew a few of the Weekend Rush guys. I think we're all sort of in our bubble. Do you know what I mean? I think there might have been one. Memory serves. I think there might have been one rave where it was Weekend Rush versus Cool FM. But
oh wow,
you might know people from like some from Hackney. Like there's a lot of junglists from there. A lot of the pirate stations were sort of in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
They were in the area, so you'd see these people around. Plus, where I worked at Renk, like I had a lot of dealings with a lot of these pirate boys, a lot of the DJs. So, but there wasn't a lot of crossover, really. You were on that station, you were in that sort of bubble,
Yeah.
Unless you were like a club DJ as well, you might have seen some of the others at the raves or DJing with them or something like that. But yeah, like I say, I don't think there was a lot of crossover. You're sort of in your own bubble,
So how real was the rivalry between the stations, and can you share any stories about any of the rivalries, or was it quite friendly?
We're all trying to do the same thing. We've all got sort of one common goal, like, we don't want to get touched by the DTI. We don't want to hot up the areas that, I think it was a bit of a thing, like, if you were in an estate, you didn't really want another station coming onto your estate hotting it up, And I think there was a time when it did get a bit silly. I think because like the guy that used to run Friends, we were on 100.7, so we were sort of up the other end, if you like, on the dial.
Yes.
So we didn't get a lot of stress or grief from other stations, but a lot of the other people that were down the other end, that's where they wanted to be for some reason. I'm not really sure why. But if you're on air and you're quite professional, as in you're paying money, you've got an engineer, he knows what he's doing, the guy that builds your rigs knows what he's doing, your signal's going to be quite tight.
Yes.
But if you've got some, guy that doesn't know his stuff and your signal's bleeding all up and down the thing, you're going to bait up the whole thing. So I know that there was times when people from one set of stations would go out and go look for another guy's. I know there was people as well that would go out and teeth transmitters. How true that is, I don't know.
Okay.
But I think it was more to do with the fact, and like I say, the guy that I used to work for, Roy, he would ring you up. He'd say, listen, like, your thing's bleeding all over the place, like, sort it out, or we'll come and sort it out for you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of rivalry, and I think things did get a little tense. But again, it's like, if you're not on another guy's patch, that's probably not going to happen. But if you are, these things, you know what boys and egos are like. They sometimes they let that get in front of themselves almost, and then they want to act stupid and things like that. But yeah, I definitely know there was times when people would go and cut people's cables and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, on the whole, I think it was quite cool. But there was a bit of silliness that went on back then. I know that for sure.
Okay, so I read this somewhere and I wanted to hear it from you. Is it true that you would mix between a vinyl player and a tape deck?
It is true. true, yeah. So I taught myself to mix. I was buying records. So like I said, there was a station called Sunrise, and there was some really big DJs on there. It was Matthew B, Rat Pack was on there, Bushwhacker, now he is Matthew B.
Okay.
Rat Pack was on there, LSD,
yeah,
Seduction. There were some big DJs on there. And my guy was at LSD. I used to love Roy, wicked DJ, because he was one of the original acid ass DJs as well.
Yes.
So, because I was buying records, when I would hear him mix, I could hear what he was doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right,
yes.
so I say the music, I guess you would class it as a music centre now, they did it back at the time. So it would be like a turntable on the top, a radio component underneath it, and then a tape deck underneath it with the sort of buttons that, if you want to play a tape, you press that button. You want to play the record player, you press that button.
Okay.
But I clocked that if you press the tape player and the turntable together, you could hear them both at the same time. So, like I say, because I was buying records, I was trying to replicate, because I would tape a lot of LSD shows. So I would play the tape and try and mix. There's no pitch control on this deck either now.
Yeah.
So I would sort of have to right, okay, that record's too slow. I can't do it with that. Do you know what I mean? And then I'd find one that was sort of there or thereabouts. So that's sort of how I learned to mix. And then, when I got in front of a couple of turntables, it was just a matter of learning to use the turntables. But yeah, that is actually true, yeah. I've got a tape of LSD and he's mixing, or he's playing records.
Okay.
And I'm trying to mix my one tune over his tape.
All right.
Ingenious what a young mind will come up with, mate.
Because I know you're a DJ as well. So with regards to learning how to mix on vinyl, what equipment was it that you learned to mix on?
So my friend, he ended up being my DJ partner on Friends, Frogger. We knew this guy called Sean, and he had a pair of these Technique turntables with the pitch. It was like a round pitch wheel.
I know.
And I can't remember what. I just remember they were black and blue. And we learned to mix on them turntables. When I met Roy, who owned Friends FM, those were the turntables that were at the station. So, Roy was saying, when we got there, Roy was like, oh, mate, all the DJs are not, they've got the amp, no one can use these turntables. And I looked at them and I was like, that's the ones that we use, isn't it? I was like, sweet. We just went on there and banged it out. He was within 2 minutes, he's like, yeah, I'll give you a show. I remember this was Saturday afternoon, 12 o'clock. So basically he just said, come up and play. And if I like it, you can have a show on there. So literally we just went on there and smashed it. And yeah, got a show straight away. When I finally got onto a pair of 1200s, it took me a little while to sort of get the feel of them. But it's like anything. If you can mix on one set of decks, you can pretty much mix on all of them, really.
Yeah. So, can you remember some of your first record purchases?
Definitely the Transmat stuff. Derek May was a huge fan of his. If I saw anything on DJ International, all the Fast Eddie stuff, Tyree Cooper, stuff like that, I would just buy it straight away. I was really I really liked the Kevin Saunderson stuff, Juan Atkins, Derek May, that sort of stuff. That was what, and that acid stuff as well, the acid house, even to this day, I love playing that stuff. I think, I do love my junglist, but for me, that's where it's all sourced from that, really. But that was it. It wasn't a thing of now there's huge labels Ram and Hospital and this and that. It wasn't like that then. A lot of it was on import. So yeah, it was definitely the techno stuff from Detroit. That's what really I was enthralled with that stuff. It just used to. I'd hear those tunes and they would make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
Yeah.
And they still do that to me now, to this day. That's my thing. I love that stuff and I love DJing that stuff as well.
Wicked. What year did you join Renk and how did that come about?
I think I'd started at Renk, it was either late 91 or mid 92, something like that. So long story short, I left school and got a job in a publishing company and they had an in-house printer. So I've been going to these parties for a little while now. I saw a flyer and I said to the guy, Jeff, what's that? And he's like, oh, this guy, he puts on these raves, Junior, you got to meet him, man. He's like, you're into all that rubbish, aren't you? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, you got to meet him, mate. He's larger than life, huge black guy, smokes a big cigar, proper, like, not loud, but like, you know, funny sort of guy. So, yeah, he put on some really, really cool acid house parties. And yeah, so we met then. He did a few I think he did about 5 or 6 parties. 2 of them didn't work, but the others were huge, mate. They were really, really big and brilliant. But then, so we sort of lost contact for a while. It was a bit weird the way it happened as well. So, there was in Dalston, one of the main shops, or in Hackney anyway, in Mare Street, one of the main shops was Wired for Sound. Okay. So I used to go in there a lot. And I can remember getting a copy of Booyaka on a blue label. That was it. I'd not seen Junior for a long time, but for some reason I knew that he had something to do with this record. I don't know why. I don't know what made me think of that. I really don't to this day. I'm a bit weird like that. I think my mum's a witch, and I've got some of these strange tendencies in me. But yeah, I knew he had something to do with it. And then I think a couple of weeks later, I see him in there, and he was like, "What are you doing in here?" I was like, "Well, you know, fucking DJ, don't you?" So he was like, I'll give you this. I've got a couple of things I'm putting out. I've got a label." So I was like, "Oh, I've got that one." He gave me some others. So I think Wired for Sound was in a place called Mare Street. Renk was a bit further up at Mare Street. He's like, "Look, I've got offices up the street. Just come up there, innit?" So he took me up there, showed me the setup, and he's like, "What are you doing? You're working?" And I wasn't at the time. He says, "Look, just come in it." Like, originally I'd started off doing distribution. He basically, I can't drive, still to this day I can't drive, but he got me a driver and then would basically load up the car and just drive around to all the shops in London, just selling records out the back of the car, and we did all right. It was a good little thing. But yeah, I think I'd started there about, I think 92, I think.
And when did you meet M-Beat?
Marlon M-Beat, he's Junior's son. So, and it was about a couple of months in before I'd actually met him. So I knew of his music as an avid collector of records, that sort of music. Like, I sort of knew of him and never come across him because, I don't know, for one reason or another, he you know, they used to be busy in the studio. I'd be busy out on the road. But yeah, I think it was maybe about 6 to 8 weeks afterwards. I think we've actually spoke about this afterwards. I remember saying to him, "God, you must have thought, who the bloody hell is this guy?" Like, me, I mean. And he was like, no, my dad had said, like, you know, that you're all right. You know, he's known you for years and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, about 6 to 8 weeks, I think. Okay.
With regards to Renk, Junior was the overall decision maker?
Yes. So he owns the label. There was 4 of us. The way it was set up was, so yeah, he'd be in charge of overall everything basically, but, you know, he'd sort of delegate stuff to me. "I need this doing, I want that." Or we'd sit and brainstorm for days on end, like hours on end, going through stuff, sort of strategizing what we want to do, where we want to get things. And in that regard, he was amazing. Like, he was, I think, if you look at people like Danny Donnelly, Rob Playford, Moving Shadow, they did things a little differently. They I don't know what it is, but they made their label stand out. And Junior was like that. I remember saying, you know, I remember him saying to me, "Oh, like, you know, you only need 3-4 hours sleep a day." I'm like, "What? If I don't get 8 hours, bruv, stay out of my way." No. So he was very, very forward thinking in that regard. But yeah, he was sort of, it was Junior that ran the show, me, Shellen, who did all our accounts. She did all the admin. She was what we called the backbone of the label. She kept it all together. And then Marlon, actually MB, and then later on we sort of signed a few people. I started signing tracks as well. But yeah, that was the main 4.
What kind of genres of music was released on Renk? Was it just jungle?
I think Renk number 1. I have heard it. I think it was a soul tune, actually. To be fair, there were a few soul bits, and then M-Beat started making stuff, and his was sort of hardcore at first, definitely hardcore. But then it just sort of evolved, I think, with the music, what was going on. I think it was sort of, like I say, it was acid house first, and then that evolved into like hardcore, and then that evolved into jungle, which evolved into drum and bass. And I think that was sort of the way that the label sort of went as well. It was hardcore, and then they were sort of mixing up the reggae element with it, and then the hardcore thing sort of just left it, and then it was just jungle, basically, and that was it.
So I heard the track Sweet Love on Jungle Hits 1, and for me it's one of the best songs on the album, which is an album full of absolute slammers. Can you share any stories about the making of that song?
Sweet Love? Well,
yeah.
I can, but I just want to clarify one thing. You've got a guy called Billy. I've not seen him in years. He was the guy that was at Telstar that actually put that album together. And you've got Billy to thank. His claim to fame was that, I don't know if you've ever heard of a pair of kittens called Ant and Dec.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's his fault that we know Ant and Dec today. So, Billy, if you're ever listening to this, mate, thanks a bunch. They did a song years ago called Let's Get Ready to Rumble. It's
yes.
But he signed them. It was him. So I remember, like, we met him, and he was telling us about all this thing, and he was a nice guy, Billy. I don't know whatever happened to him, but yeah, he was telling me this story about that it was him that got Ant and Dec, because I think they was on some kids program or something, and there was a lot of that going on at the time. You know, these record executives would get people that were in soap operas. There was a lot of that with Neighbours and all that sort of carry on.
Yes.
So he thought he'd just swap Neighbours for Biker Grove or whatever the bloody hell it was called, and and we've got him to thank for that. So cheers, Bill. But yeah, that album, Sweet Love, God, what can I tell? Well, I can actually tell you that I was the first person in the world to actually play that song, which is a nice touch. I always loved the original. Always loved the Anita Baker original.
Yes.
I remember being at secondary school when that came out. I loved that song. And I think that the girl that sang it, Naslin, an amazing vocalist, like, she had her own sort of issues that she had to deal with that we didn't really appreciate and we didn't know at the time, but came out subsequently. I can remember one of the guys from DJ Magazine coming down and Junior playing a load of stuff, and he was like, yeah, that's really cool, that tune. And the way you've sampled that as well sounds brilliant, man. Like, you can't tell it's a sample. And a lot of people have said that they thought the original promos and stuff were samples, and we're like, no, mate, it's the girl singing it, man. It's all live. It's funny. So like I say, I think I vaguely remember I played it on Pirate on the Thursday, and then on the Friday, I think we went to Jungle Fever up in Coventry, and we give Devious the dub, and he played it. And the crowd didn't go bananas, but the girls, you could see the ladies loved it. They loved that tune. And then subsequently, yeah, people have told me that it was it's been their first dance sort of song at their wedding. It's funny, I was at Fabric the other week, and I heard Breakage play it, and I thought, wow, I hit him up, and I was like, bro, I was a bit surprised to hear you play that, and he's like, mate, I play it nearly every set. Yeah. It's a classic. From
that Jungle Hits 1 album, that track there is just a standalone, and you can play it to virtually anyone, and they'll like it.
It's a format that people can get their head round. Do you know what I mean? If they're not into dance music, or they're not into jungle, or they're not into this or that, like, you know, it's a song at the end of the day. It's a cover version of a song. So yeah, I don't know. I've not. I'll have to go back and listen to that Jungle Hits. I've not listened to it in God knows since then, I think.
Here's a question for you. You made a track with Zinc called Ripple, and you made another track called Groove. So how long have you known Zinc for?
So I said that I was on a pirate station. I'd sort of come away from the pirate scene for a little while, and then I'd heard Impact on the radio, and I was talking to one of our pals, and he was like, oh, have you heard that station, Impact? And I was like, yeah, they're quite good, innit? And he was like, yeah, bruv, you should go on there, mate. You should get on there. And I was like, nah. He said, go on, man. What's wrong with you? What you got to lose? And he was like, mate, listen to them DJs. He's like, you wouldn't be out of place with any of them. He's like, in fact, we're better than a lot of them. You should try it and that. And I was like, nah. And he was like, well, if you don't send a tape in, I will. So I was like, okay. So I rang up, and I actually knew one of the guys that picked up the phone, Axel. He was a DJ on Sunrise as well. So when I met him, gave him a tape, and then he rang back the next day and was like, yeah, come. So Swift and Zinc, they were on Impact and Format as well. I guess it's like when you sort of meet someone for the first time, and you know, it's like a kindred spirit, innit? It's like, you know, this guy's into the same stuff as I am, or this girl's into the same music as I am, or whatever, you know, it's that sort of thing. And like, we clicked straight away, me and Zinc. And he's very, very, very professional guy. Like, he was an accountant for a long time. You know, he worked 9 to 5, and then he was in the studio 6 to 12 every day for ages. So that guy put in some graft. But yeah, it was just basically two DJs that met on a station, and yeah, he's actually my daughter's godfather. So yeah. Wow.
Swift and Zinc and Mampy Swift are two different DJs, or are they the same?
Yeah, it's quite funny. Yeah. So Mampy Swift is the Swift on Cool FM.
Yes.
He's got that label Charged Records.
Yes.
Swift and Zinc was a partnership back in the day. Yeah, so DJ Swift and Mampy Swift are two different things.
I know Zinc made the track Super Sharp Shooter. Are there any stories you can share about that tune? And
well, yeah, so it's quite funny because so you got the techniques, you know, the pitch control on the side, you got it on the green light. I would always pitch things up a bit. So basically the green room, if you look at the early Zinc stuff, it's all recorded at the green room, which is Swift's spare bedroom. So it's called the green room because we all used to blaze up too much weed in there. I'd heard Zinc making Super Sharp Shooter, and I thought, yeah, that sounds all right, but like he would play records a bit slower than I would. So I guess he would make them a bit slow. I remember everything we used to record together, I'd be like, pitch it up a bit, man, pitch it up a bit. So when he did Super Sharp Shooter, he brought it to me at Renk and played it on a DAT. And I was like, that's that thing he was working on it. He's like, yeah. I was like, that sounds all right, you know. I said, what are you doing with it? He's like, I just made it, that's all. I was like, okay, well, what are you doing now? And he's like, I'm just going to go Music House and cut it. I was like, well, look, when you cut it on dub, bring it back in it. So I'm thinking, yeah, I can pitch it up and have a listen. So he's gone to Music House and Hype was there. Hype heard it and was like, right, I want that for Ganja. So when he came back with a dub, I played it and I'm like, this is all right, man. I was like, give me this for Renk. And he's like, mate, you've just missed it. Hype signed it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm glad that I didn't sign it for Renk because, I don't think he'd have seen as much money as he did from Hype because my boss had a tendency to not pay his dues properly, as it were. Okay. That's me being very polite.
On Renk Records, you had another track on Watch It. The sample on that, is that sample or did someone come and voice that track?
No, so that's a guy called Mello. I'm not sure how that sort of hooks up, but he was an American rapper. I'm sure he was from New York. And he came over for a couple of weeks. We put him up. And he came and voiced that. I remember Hype, because that was the time we were trying to get a remix out of Hype, and I was playing him some stuff. And there's a line in it, in that song, he says, "I'll roast up the barrel," or something like that. And Hype's like, yeah, give me that. I'm playing at Roast the weekend. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He said something about Roast. And I was like, I don't think he's talking about Roast the Raven. I was like, no, don't matter. So, I was like, okay. And that would have been it. Anything like, and I've heard that tape back a few times and people said to me, yeah, what's that tune? But we did actually it is out there. There are some copies of it out there flying around.
Funnily enough, Watch It, I know that from a DJ Hype roast set.
That's it. That's his first. He plays it well.
It's the first track. Yep. It's the first track.
We're talking about the same tape. It would have been the first tune that he played.
Yep, that's the one. That's the exact same one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because that track out, I didn't really hear it from others, but I just remember it from that, and it's just such a distinctive tune.
Well, it's one of those things. I think like Marlon had just sort of knocked that sort of tune up for something for the guy to sort of spit on, and Junior, in his infinite wisdom, he's done this. He's released a few things that Marlon goes mad about. He's like, that was just a sketch. That's just something I knocked up. I hadn't even I'd started it and was going to go back to it and deal with it. But Junior was just like, yeah, give me it and put it out. He was notorious for it. It was terrible. But yeah, I think that was one of those ones. It sort of sounded like a lot of his other stuff. But yeah, I remember giving it to Hype. Junior has put it out because I've seen a few of them flying around. I think there's some Renk classic things flying about. It's a bit after my time actually, but you can actually get that out there.
So there's also tracks like Surrender, Style, Shuffle, the 3 big S's. You know, that authentic jungle sound. Can you share any stories or memories about any of these sort of tracks?
For me, those were the best times. Like, Marlon was just on a roll. The thing about Renk, I'm trying to think, Conga Natty would have been like, it was only his output. It was only Rebel stuff you know what I mean? It was only him that he would put out. And for a long time, Renk was like, it was only M-Beat stuff that we would put out.
Yes.
Labels like Suburban Bass and Moving Shadow, they had their roster of artists, and I love those labels and labels like that. But I think if you look through our back catalogue, like, Marlon was on such a prolific roll. Like, I think Zinc was like that for a long time. Every tune that he did, I loved them. Like, he just got better. I think he got into his groove, and that was it. He just rinsed it. And like, Marlon was like that. He sort of got hooked into a sound, and that was him, before, because I know a lot of people sort of, they only associate Renk with Incredible. they would be what I wouldn't say fair weather fans, nothing at all, but, you know, people that don't really know that much about it. But, you know, I know that the real heads out there, they know that guy was on such a roll. So when I hear them tunes, it was an amazing time. He was just on such a roll. And I don't think he made a bad record for about 3 years. And he was on it like every, you know, we would put out a tune once a month, once every couple of months, standard.
So, you know, tracks like Rough Like Me, that has like a sample of Human Nature in it.
Yeah.
Surrender has the New Avengers sample at the very start.
Yeah.
Were there any issues around sampling other artists' music? Like, did anyone ever say to you, no, I don't want this track out there, or anything like that?
I've had this question asked before, but you've got to remember the time. Jungle wasn't well known. People sort of looked down their nose at it. Do you know what I mean? It was like hardcore. Like, everyone used to look at us like you're the, for want of a better word, like dance music's bastard son. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's just like, what are this lot doing now? Because the hardcore was all like speeded up vocals, Pinky and Perky stuff.
Yes.
We really got looked at like we were peasants. So not a lot of people, apart from the people within the scene, not a lot of people paid attention to that music at all. So it was a bit like anything goes, you know, like there was none of this. Like, I think we did have a situation once. Marlon did a tune. God, what's it called? It's not on Renk. It's on like a sister label. It was on Serious Records or something. It's like quite a dark. It's like a really dark tune that M-Beat done. And it was on a label. Junior just started a little thing called Serious Records or something like that. And I remember, I think it was Judge Jules. They had a label called Serious, and I remember them ringing up constantly and leaving messages. You need to stop this. Like, we just put out one tune on it. Like, I remember Junior saying to him, "Look, mate, do what you're doing." Like, and he was threatening all sorts. He's a judge or lawyer and what, I don't know. But yeah, no, not really anything like that. No, because it was a different time. Like, people just did what they wanted. There was none of this sort of like sample stuff. Like, that wasn't a thought at all. Like, you just did what you wanted. You got to remember as well that, like, those sort of times, like, we did sell records, but not like millions. Like, yeah. So yeah, no one really gave a damn like what they sampled, or it just wasn't a consideration back then, mate.
So let's talk about Incredible. How did General Levy come to voice the track?
My recollection is that, so we were published through EMI, which is we had a really good relationship with a guy called Guy Moot there, who's, I think he's one of the top bosses at EMI now, if my memory serves. And he was a really cool guy. He was a really, really nice fella. And memory serves, I think he put it together. I think he'd given someone got Levy's number from somewhere. I think Junior phoned him, and like within an hour or two, he'd come down the studio. Junior would sort of give him the spiel, because Marlon had sampled Levy a couple of times.
Okay. I
think his tune Heat, appears in one of his early tunes, Marlon. But yeah, I think it was just literally as quickly as that. I think Junior had got his number, phoned him, or he phoned up, one of the two. He came down. I think they sort of spoke. Levy liked what he heard, and then they were down the next day, and they were at it, mate. That tune came about so quickly, literally within about 5 days of the actual initial phone call. That tune was done.
And when you guys heard the finished track, did you guys know you had a hit on your hands?
It's a bit of a funny one. So this is the thing. So you've got to remember the context, and it's quite difficult to sort of explain to people that weren't around at the time. Jungle at the time, it was all sample based. It was just snippets of little, it would be little snippets of vocal things, or a little snippet of a rare groove tune or a reggae tune or something. There was nothing that started and went right through the whole thing. Nothing was like that. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard it, I was like, it's good, but it's just too much, man. You can't put that out. It's too much. Like, there's nothing like that. And they were like, yeah, Steve, don't worry, it's all good. And I'm glad they didn't listen to me. But yeah, so I remember going to Music House on the Thursday. If memory serves, I think it was Easter bank holiday. And we'd given it to The plan was to give it to Devious and Mickey Finn. We'd always give our stuff to them. And yeah, I think we'd give it to them on the Thursday. Frost was there. He wanted a copy of it. It's a long story, but like Junior was like, no. And I was like, look, just give it to him, mate. Just shut up. Just give it to him. He wasn't having it. And then he relented in the end. Give it to Frost. That was on the Thursday. We weren't in on the Friday or the Monday. We come in on the Tuesday and the phones just lit up, like literally lit up. And that was it. The rest is history. We knew we had a big tune on our hands because we'd had nothing like that before. We'd had some big tunes, but nothing with that sort of impact. The thing with Renk was they was always growers. People would come late to the table. You know what I mean? The good thing about when I was out selling records is that I was out there for ages selling records. People were sort of getting into it and then finding out about the back catalogue. But like I say, that was instant. That was just huge. And it was everywhere. Everywhere I went, literally everywhere I went, that tune was everywhere. So we had big tunes on our hands, but nothing that instant and nothing to that size, no. So I don't think you can ever know, like, a tune would be that big because, like, we're just coming to the end of a 25-year anniversary tour. It's difficult to think in them sort of terms back then, you know.
Great music never gets old. Do you know
but
what
this
I mean?
is the thing as well. That still flips me out that it's, that our tunes still get played now.
How many units did you sell for Incredible? Do you know?
I read somewhere Junior said it was like 30 or 40,000, but I think he's talking out of his neck. And I think I know the reason why he might be saying that as well. But I remember it being like 300,000 to 400,000, mate. I remember there's a picture of somewhere with the first shipment of records that come in. And there's just boxes and boxes of these things everywhere. There's a picture with Junior sat in front of it. I remember seeing it. I'm sure he's got it somewhere. But yeah, I think it was like 300,000 to 400,000. That was then. That was back then.
So was there actual performances and touring with that song?
Yeah. So we see, that was the thing as well. Again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But what had happened was that because so we did Sweet Love and Incredible. We did those with vocalists. Alan could actually play live as well. So we started doing like the ritzy nightclubs and stuff like that. We was at like 4 or 5 times a week PA in that tune. I never used to go to them. It wasn't really my thing. We toured Japan a few times. We did an album deal with Sony, a 3-album deal, and we toured twice out there to promote the albums. Basically, they released our back catalogue on three albums. So yeah, we went out to do the promo for that. Again, like I say, hindsight's a great thing. I think what we should have done is got in the studio and started recording while Incredible was hot. But because this other revenue stream had appeared, like playing live and PAing, that's what sort of took a precedent with that. And again, I've said it a few times, hindsight's a great thing, but you don't know when these things are going on around you at the time. But yeah, we were just taking advantage of something that was new.
Okay, so in your own words, please explain what happened in relation to the backlash or the boycott towards Incredible.
Okay, right. So there's a now infamous or famous quote that Levy was supposed to have said in the Face magazine or ID magazine. I think it was the Face, but yeah, he'd said something along the lines of like, I'm bigging up jungle, or I'm running jungle, or something along those lines. And I think the jungle scene, again, you got to add a bit of context to it. We were a very insular, self-sufficient scene. Everyone looked down their noses at us. Our parties were huge. They were attendances were huge, mate. Some of those world dance things, they were 20,000-25,000 and stuff like that. We got on with, we had our own distribution, we had our own pirate radio stations, we had our own network. We didn't need anyone else. We certainly didn't need the mainstream. We certainly didn't need the mainstream magazines or mainstream record labels. We just got on with it. We did our own thing. So it was something that we all built up together. So, and this is my personal opinion. I think that some of the jungle scene, the main players, are sort of taken umbrage to Levy's words. Like, we've built this thing up together. This guy comes along who's nothing to do with it, and now you're saying you're king of the jungle. So they sort of banded together, formed a committee basically to boycott the record, boycott Incredible. And so it goes along the lines of that they said, right, any DJ that plays that record is blacklisted. any promoters that book General Levy is blacklisted. We, as a committee or something, we won't let any of our DJs play at your raves. It was just crazy, man. It was like, you know, some kids had thrown their toys out of the pram. It seems really strange to think about it now, but like these are, and I won't mention any names, but these are like the huge guys at the head of this scene now. This was a lot of them that had got together, and I think I can sort of understand it a bit, but I think it was a bit extreme what they did, you know, or what they sort of said they were going to do. But the problem is that the tune was big already. It was out there, so there's nothing they could do to sort of lock it down. It had already, you know, the horse had bolted, if you like. But yeah, so that was that basically, and yeah, I find it very strange that grown men can act in such a way, but you know, I can look myself in the mirror and say I'm cool with what went on. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. But yeah, it was a bit different at the time. I'll be honest with you, it was very strange to say the least. Very strange.
So, what do you feel were the wider impacts to the scene off the back of this boycott?
I think the thing that sort of left a bitter taste in my mouth was, because at first it was like, right, okay, we don't want our music on Radio 1, and we don't want our music on the TV, and we don't want it on Top of the Pops, and we don't want this, we don't want that. But then it sort of moved into the realms of, right, this isn't just a General Levy boycott, this is sort of like a ragga jungle boycott. Like, we're going to get rid of this element of this music. And I don't know if that was the intention, it probably wasn't, but I know, talking to people subsequently, and I know that you know yourself, because I know I've listened to Navigator's interview on your show, and a lot of people that were sort of associated with that sound and that sort of style of jungle were almost ostracized immediately. And then the music totally changed, you know? Like, you got into the sort of darker stuff, the more Ed Rush and Optical sort of sound, and I love that stuff, mate. I love it. But still to this day, I love all that stuff. So I didn't have a problem with any of that music. It's just, I think it sort of took on a bit of a life of its own, you know, like inadvertently. I think that was the thing I think that was the downside of it, was that was it. It was like, right, okay, like no more ragga jungle. That's it now. And it took a little while for that to sort of come back and filter back into the thing. It's quite funny because, you know, you get this every few years, you know, oh, jungle's making a comeback, and it's like, bro, it didn't go anywhere, man. Like, you just went somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It didn't go anywhere. It was always, well, it wasn't always there. Like I say, after that boycott, I think there was a few years where like they didn't want nothing to do with any of that, and then yeah, it started to creep back in, and now it's, you know, it's cool again. But yeah, that was a bit I didn't really like about all that. It left a little bit of a nasty taste in my mouth, to be fair.
I think, and again, personally speaking as well, I feel like there definitely was this demarcation between what is considered jungle and then what was considered drum and bass. So,
yeah, now you see, this is another thing. I hate that fucking word. Excuse my language, I do apologise for swearing, sorry.
Okay.
It's not so much I hate that word. For me, because I remember it was jungle, that was it, right? And then this thing happened, and it's like, right, okay, we're trying to come away from that. So it was, jungle was like the sort of the reggae sort of element of it. Now it's drum and bass. Like for me, drum and bass was that sort of Amen, slap up Amen thing back in the day. Yeah. That was drum and bass. And that was a form of jungle. So then, you know, I can remember like when the so-called intelligent sound come along, the Bookham stuff and all that. Like, I love all that stuff as well, man. And it's like, you know, these sort of, for want of a better word, white middle class or upper class kids that were getting into it. And it's like, you know, do they want to be seen as rude boys and all that? Some of them do, some of them don't. And it's almost like yeah, it's like I don't know what the word it is I'm looking for, but it's like, yeah, we don't really associate with that word, but we're cool with the word drum and bass. It's a bit cooler, you know, it's a bit more trendy or something like that. I don't even like that word. I don't like saying it because it's that thing, innit? Jungle, drum and bass, or drum and bass, jungle. Like, it's jungle, mate, at the end of the day. That's it. Like, anything after that is whatever. But yeah, I think there was a little touch of that, yeah.
So there was also the track with Jamiroquai, Do You Know Where You're Coming From?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Again, that was Guy at EMI. So Jamiroquai signed to EMI. I can remember Marlon playing me a sketch of a tune that he had, which was the basis of Do You Know Where You're Coming From. I thought, yeah, that's really cool, man. And I don't, you know what, to this day, it's not something I've ever thought of, why their name was mentioned or how or what. I'll have to ask him. So I'm out of him tomorrow. I'll have to ask him, but I'm not sure why. I mean, they they were the band at the time. Like they were hot then. I think that album, Travelling Without Moving, Do You Know Where You're Coming From, is on that album. On the first presses of that album, Do You Know Where You're Coming From, it's the bonus track on there. It's like the hidden track. And it's actually on the CD of Virtual Insanity, Jay's tune, Virtual Insanity. There's 4. I did actually have, I think I've got it somewhere. I did actually have the CD, the Virtual Insanity CD. It's actually on there. So I think I did actually read somewhere that was the lead single from that album. But they were huge before that Black album, the Travelling Without Moving one. But that was the one that, like, they went global after that album. That's huge. But they were cool. They were really nice guys. They came down, brought the Ferraris down. Really, really cool. I think they was there 2 days, probably like 4 or 5 hours both days. That tune was done real quick, real quick. Yeah, and it's really, really cool to see people that are very creative get together and what can be achieved when creative minds come together. Yeah, that was amazing to watch. But I sort of went out, came back, and it was done. Blam! I was like, wow. And it's really sad as well because the guy, Toby Smith, he played all the strings and the keyboard parts on there.
Yeah.
He's actually passed now, and Toby was a really, really, really nice guy. Such a lovely fella. A really, really talented musician, yeah. He was, Jay's super talented as well, but I think them two together, they were the creative force behind Jamiroquai, and I think they were the reason why they were so big at the time.
So when you mentioned that the band would come down, so was it like the sample of the drum?
Right, so like I say, Marlon had a sketch of a tune that he'd done, that he'd been working on.
Yeah.
And so who came down? It was Simon, the guitar player, Toby, the keyboard player, Jay come down, and Derek, the drummer. So they all brought their kit down with them. Derek drummed, Marlon sampled Derek drumming over the track.
Okay.
Toby played over it, Simon played over it, and they just sat down and put it all together. Yeah, it was an amazing thing to see, but they just basically played over the sketch that Marlon had and then just filled it out and made it into a song.
So after finishing with Renk, what did you do after that?
I left Renk. Basically, Junior inadvertently had sort of run it into the ground. And this is my own opinion. I think he sort of started listening to his own sort of hype and started doing things that were just... I remember having arguments with him. I'm like, what are you doing, bro? This is rubbish. This is like, what are you doing? Like, this is just not... And he was sinking loads of money into just stupidness. And so, Renk finished. And then he sort of rang me up one day and was like, come back. I've got a garage label. And he had another artist. We had a label called Money Music. That went on for a little while. He did a few albums. Junior did a few albums. There was a Renk Garage album that was not bad. It was all right. We come close to signing a couple of garage tunes. But then, so I sort of left and got into the corporate world. Yeah, I work at a city law firm now. I run a facilities department. Yeah, just had to get a proper job, unfortunately.
Life goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
So who would you, or is there anyone within the scene that you would like to have worked with?
What, me personally or Renk me?
You.
Oh, mate, to be honest with you, I'm a DJ. I did some stuff with Zinc because basically we did a track ages and ages before that Renk stuff. There used to be a rave called Desire. Big up Phil as well, by the way. Mick. Phil's a really, really cool guy. And, basically Zinc had got a sample and he's like, I've got a sampler, come round, innit? So we made this tune called It's Time. And then, so when I was working at Renk, we'd had a studio at our disposal. Basically, Marlon used to use it during the day and it was empty at night. And Junior was like, the girl I was seeing at the time, she fell pregnant. And Junior was like, listen, mate, when that kid pops, your time's going to be taken up. If I was you, I'd spend the next 9 months just recording heavy. And we sort of did that. And Zinc was sort of cutting his teeth production-wise. So he was up for it. So, I think we did a couple of 12s. There's a couple of remixes that we did on Renk as well that are sort of not really known about because we didn't do them as Zinc and Steve B. Actually, it's like S&B mixes or something like that because it was just too long to put on the CD cases. We did some remixes for him and that. And then, he was actually correct that when the baby came, it just took up all of my time. So I did. Don't get me wrong, I didn't record begrudgingly, not at all. I think it was just a natural progression from being a DJ. I prefer playing records and making them, but I'm actually giving some serious thought about remixing those tunes. But we'll see.
So do you still play out now?
Yeah, still. I've got a residency at Goldsmiths Uni. I do that on a Wednesday. There's some stuff in the pipeline, not as far as DJing's concerned, but 2020 could be not a comeback year, but could be very interesting to say the least. I'll say no more than that.
So, with regards to the DJing, do you prefer playing vinyl or digital?
Do you know what? Doesn't bother me, mate. I don't have any of that Serato stuff or anything. I'll either play off of vinyl, I'll either play on decks, or I can play on CDJs with like USBs or CDs. I do actually have CDs. It's funny when I play it. I've heard a couple of the kids at Goldsmiths like just playing CDs. You're like, oh, okay. And the first night I played there was like a freshers ball, and there was some girl stood at the side like with her jaw on the floor, and I was like, "You're right there, love." She's like, "You're playing records," and I was like, "Yeah." But the funny thing is that most of the records I was playing was probably older than her. Yeah. Like literally older than her. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I haven't really got a preference. I don't mind. Either or is fine with me, mate.
Any plans on reforming Renk Records or any new material or remixes in the works from M-Beat or indeed Steve B?
I've been looking on Discogs. A couple of people have sort of said to me, so you can get Ripple on Zinc's Bandcamp, because a couple of people would hit me up and ask me if I've got any copies of it. I've literally got one. And I sort of saw on there that it was about 50 quid or something like that, and I'd seen, it's got the cheapest price someone's paid for it and the most expensive. Yeah. I think someone actually paid £100 for it, which I don't really get, but I know we only did 500 of them, but that's another story. But so yeah, a couple of people had been saying to me, "Oh, you should repress them," and blah blah blah. And so I've not spoke to Zinc about it yet, but I think I might broach the subject with him and see if he's up for maybe remixing some of them and repressing the originals with a remix, or getting someone else to remix or whatever. As far as Renk, as far as I know, there are no plans for Renk to come back. If anyone's interested, you can still license our back catalogue. If you get in touch with me on Instagram, Steve B at Renk Records, I think it is. As far as M-Beat's concerned, there is a remix of Booyaka we've not given it out to anyone. I think it's by Shimon and Modified Motion. I've just heard the first draft of it and it sounds really good, but M-Beat rang me the other night, gassed, I think is the word that the kids say today. He was gassed, severely gassed, and so I'm sure that should see the light of day in 2020. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say at the moment. Whether there is some more stuff from M-Beat, I'm not quite sure. You'll have to sort of watch this space.
Cool. Finally, what would you like to say to all the fans of Steve B, Renk, and jungle music listening to this interview?
Just thanks, man. It never ceases to amaze me, the stories that I hear over the years about that song. Like I work in the city with lawyers and stuff like that, and it never ceases to amaze me the amount of people that know those tunes that we did. And it's always a pleasure hearing those stories, and I never, we wouldn't sort of be where we are without the people that put their hands in their pockets and buy the records or go to the raves or go and listen to the DJs. We wouldn't be anything, so I never sort of take that for granted. So if I had anything to say, it would be thank you very much. We really, really, really do appreciate your support. And long may it continue. It's funny, I was saying to a girl the other day, I said, "Oh, do you want to come to this 25 years thing?" And she said, "I can't." So, well, maybe you can get to the 50-year incredible anniversary. So we'll see. We shall see what happens with that. But yeah, it would just be like, thank you, man. Just, keep the stories coming. I love hearing that. It never, like I say, it never ceases to amaze me. I always love hearing them. So I've always got time for people when they stop me and chat about those things, always.
Cool. And on Instagram, I know you're on Instagram and on Twitter. Your handle is Steve B Renk Records, is that right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, Steve B at Renk Records. I've not been, long story short, I dropped my phone in the sink, so I can't actually get at my Twitter handle. But yeah, you can get me on Insta. I'm sure I'll have to sort this thing out with Twitter as well at some point. But yeah, hit me up, man. I'm here.
Wicked. All right, Steve. Well, thanks a lot for your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sush, mate, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cheers.